Well, hello and welcome to this live stream. I'm joined here with my colleague, Cedric Clyburn. That's him. And there is no fear, there is no loathing. And he is live from Las Vegas as they wrap up the IBM Tech Exchange conference. How's it going, Cedric?
Great, Frank. It's good to see you. Reporting live here, as you can see, from IBM's Tech Exchange conference this week, which is, if you don't know already, is their biggest conference for engineers, technical people, and actually for in the U.S. it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, technical conferences for AI and beyond. So
Very
it's a
cool.
pleasure to be here with you, man.
Very cool. And I know that you were there. You gave a couple of presentations on something that's near and dear to our hearts, Instruct Lab. How'd that go?
Dude, actually, well, speaking of that, let me take you around the
Cool.
hall and I want to show you actually the Instruct Lab lounge.
Ooh, it's a lounge.
Yeah, so do you remember that from Summit?
I didn't go to Summit this last year.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll bring you up to speed real quick. So, essentially,
Very
we've got a
nice.
lounge here for people to come and fine tune models from laptops that we have right back here as well. So essentially, you come by, you ask questions, you get hands on with LLMs, and you get hands on with the fine tuning process to customize those LLMs. Pretty neat, right?
That is very nice. That's pretty cool. So you don't even need to bring a laptop. You can just stroll on up and type
And
away.
yeah, use one of these nice MacBook Pros too. It's
Ooh,
it's
very
the real
nice.
deal.
Very nice. Oh, it runs locally? Is that how it works on the MacBook
Yeah,
Pro? Oh,
Well,
very cool.
so they're using the MacBook Pros, and we're SSH'd into a Red Hat Enterprise Linux machine, the
Gotcha.
same one that you've been tinkering away on.
Cool.
I heard.
Cool. Yeah, for those who were wondering, so RHEL AI is the Red Hat product that at the heart of it is something called Instruct Lab, which basically brings the power of open source to LLMs, right? The ability to contribute, the ability to fine tune. So what are the other big announcements? I'm really excited about Granite 3.
Wow. So yeah, let's talk about open source AI foundation models for a second. So Granite 3 came out, right? I think what was it, 1 day or two days ago?
Something like that, yeah.
Oh my gosh, the benchmarks, man! I'm really excited to see this because before the code models were performing very well, and very competitive, so that you could essentially run your own free, open source and private GitHub Copilot right on your own IDE. But now these
Right.
language models are like top tier, state of the art. I'm very impressed. Uh, I haven't gotten hands on. Have you?
Not yet, not yet, not yet. I've been working away at getting the YouTube channel AI by Example launched,
Oh, tell
which
me more about
there's a
that.
shameless plug. So one of the things I think that is important is to kind of have a place where we can explain AI concepts for folks that are not really data scientists or AI engineers. And this isn't like explaining it to your grandma or whatever. It's really more about explaining it to IT ops people, regular developers, right? I know you have a history of being a developer advocate and just being a developer as well. I was too. And it wasn't that long ago that I was a C# programmer, right? Who found my
Ooh.
way into I know. Um, writing Windows apps like native Windows clients, and it was I kind of saw the light when I saw where machine learning and data science was headed. And this was 2015, right? So it wasn't it was kind of early on the hype wave. And ever since then I've been just fascinated by just the engineering challenges that this brings up. And I think it's very important, I think, to bring more people into this field, right? Because there's room enough for everybody. There's clearly a high demand for AI, maybe too much demand, and I think we really need to bring that along. Especially with Instruct Lab, right? Like Instruct Lab, anyone who can get it YAML can build out a prototype model. Whether or not they can
Right.
bring that to you know an enterprise production ready without a data scientist or an AI engineer, I think is debatable. but it's always good to have somebody who's good at that side of the things. But being able to create these models, I mean, how easy is it?
I think we're very fortunate. I mean, yes, as both of us being developers, I think we're familiar with what we've done, right?
Right.
Writing code and spinning up services and kind of that stuff locally on our machine, right? And then after that to production, that's a different story, right? If it works on my machine, good to go.
That's right. That's right.
I think what's really unique, and I actually have some unique perspective into this because about a year or two ago, I started kind of a little bit of a data science journey. So I started working with different models. At that point, we were having the early chat GPTs, we were having Google's Bard, there was Stable Diffusion, all these models. And to actually get these model files running on your computer was a lot of work. You had to work
Yeah.
with different model formats, ONNX being one of those examples, different runtimes that were not as user friendly as what we have now, where essentially I can spin up an AI service just like I would a web server, right? So if I have a web server, I'm serving the HTML file. It's almost as easy to do that with one of these models, right? Like a Granite or a Llama on my local machine and start testing there and going back and forth. And I think we're very fortunate to have that now.
It's really got a lot easier to do the serving, right? Because it used to be actually a lot of data scientists don't know this, right? Because all they do is like just get me to my Jupyter notebook,
Right.
and there's a lot of back, there was a number of platforms where they'll just say, push this notebook to production, right? There's a lot of stuff now. There's pros and cons of that approach, but the
Yeah.
ability to kind
Not
of
same thing.
but I mean, the Lego block approach of you build the model, then you can kind of run it around, and the model becomes almost like another artifact for developers, right? Almost like a container.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of containers, I have an announcement from Docker and Red Hat. So we've
Oh,
actually
do tell.
partnered, yeah, we've partnered together, Docker and Red Hat. And this week we announced that InstructLab for model fine tuning is now on a container that you can find on the Docker Hub. So essentially, you run the InstructLab fine tuning process as a container on top of your hardware and your GPU accelerators, right? Using those drivers, and you're actually the model, for example, the taxonomy, all of those different components that you would
Right.
normally have running on your local disk, now in a containerized format, so you don't have to have PyTorch, you don't have to have Llama CPP for serving and inference. Pull this Docker image down and run it with to what you want to configure. So how cool is that?
That is very cool. Like I didn't catch that announcement. I saw like in our internal emails, like like we make an announcement with Docker. I didn't, you know, I'm a naughty data scientist because like as soon as I see something that's not related to AI, I'm like, right. I got to get better at that. But no, I think it's really cool actually that that now this has become part and parcel of the entire solution set that we're seeing a lot of this now just being integrated into a much larger ecosystem, which I think is also a pain point for a lot of data scientists in the sense that they used to be they were treated with kid gloves, pretty early on. They were called unicorns, right? Before that meant $1 billion startup. Um, but now the reality is that they have to play along with they have to treat this like a team sport, right? You can build the model, you can do all the math and the crazy stuff, but if it's not pushed into production, it's not adding business value. And that's really where I think a lot of data scientists have an adjustment period, to come forward.
Yeah, much more collaborative effort than it was with data scientists having their own notebooks. And the issue before was that a lot of AI workloads just wouldn't make it to production. I remember seeing like some
Right.
small percentage of those that actually would, and it was kind of disheartening, right? Because say you're a developer or you're just anyone working on a project, you put a lot of work
Right.
into it, you do experiments, you put your hard blood, sweat, and tears into something, and then it unfortunately doesn't make it all the way. And I think that being a collaborative effort now much more than it has been, kind of enables us to have a higher shot at getting these actually running and helping people out there in the world. So I think it's a great time. It's a great time.
It's a great time to be in AI, and it's a great time to be a developer who touches AI, right? I mean, because it's much more accessible, and it doesn't have to be as scary as I think a lot of people will make it in their minds. And I think Instruct Lab goes a long way to that. Rel AI goes a long way to making that production process a lot easier. And obviously, there's OpenShift AI too, that will help scale that. And I think that it's a pretty good story, actually. I know I'm biased, and you're probably biased too because we both work at Red Hat. But I'm feeling confident about our kind of our story, more than I've ever felt. Not that I ever didn't feel confident, but
Well, I think the confidence results from the open source community. Just what we've
absolutely.
seen, that I've seen here at the conference in terms of what's happening with Instruct Lab, what's happening with the open source models. And something I really want to point out too at this conference is that we had the day zero was actually open source community day. So
Oh,
I'll actually
really?
take you. I'll take you around to show some of these projects that were featured. But I'm talking about all sessions and workshops around K-Serve and Ray and Kubernetes and these Granite models. But also we had people from the Linux Foundation and Meta and other
Very
people who
nice.
are invested in open source AI who are all here presenting here at TechXChange on this kind of dream of open and collaborative AI. And so not just IBM and Red Hat, but you think about Meta and a lot of other
Right.
organizations that are in open source or under the CNCF umbrella who are all coming together to make this happen. I think that's what's amazing.
It's really exciting to see, particularly a company like Meta where they kind of had a. If you had told me that they would be a big player in open source AI not that long ago, I would say maybe 12 months ago, maybe 18 months ago, I would have had a hard time believing it. But they are not just. I mean, they are a major player in this, right? When new llama models come out, it's a big deal, and it's all open source or open weight. It's impressive to see. I have to say, I have to hand it to Meta for really like embracing this and just going like full steam ahead on this.
Yeah,
There were a couple of Meta speakers at the day one keynote. There was somebody from
yeah,
who heads up the PyTorch initiative, which is
right.
open source from Facebook. Yeah.
Exactly. There were PyTorch folks, and there was also the heads of generative AI at Meta specifically. And if
Hmm.
you actually have time, I think you've already probably seen it, Frank. But for the community, these interviews that Mark Zuckerberg has done on the Darwesh podcast, or some of these different kind of longer format interviews, where he talks about
Hmm.
how they went from essentially their research team coming up with models for Facebook's and own internal like recommendations to then seeing that, oh, more people could use this and we can make an impact in the open source world, and how having an arc, I feel like, and kind of seeing the benefits of open source just as so many people have in the past decade or decades. And so it's really good to see the community come together. And actually I'll show the AI Alliance here on my screen if you want to share this.
Sure. Are you able to share your screen? You should be able to.
Yeah, let's see. I've got it pulled up here.
Cool.
So let me see. Are you able to see it? I'm sharing from my side.
Let me see. Ah, now I see it. Hang on. There you go.
Sweet. So I'll briefly mention the Instruct Lab container image to run. Just Docker Hub, Red Hat / Instruct Lab to do a Docker pull. There's also just recently the Granite models. You can now just do a Docker pull and a Docker run to run those. In
That's
addition
awesome.
to,
I did read that. That is awesome. I mean, it's going to make our lives easier as we build out like training material and stuff. But yeah.
right, yeah, yeah. I think containers are also the future for not just our workloads for software, but also for these models, right? We use the
Well, I mean,
same
think of
technology.
how much easier containers have made software development, right?
Right.
You use the classic thing, works on my machine, right? Well, now you can kind of take that, my machine and make it portable, right? It solves multiple problems, but I think fundamentally for the developer it solves that. And if you're an AI developer or AI engineer or whatever the hip title is nowadays, that's a big deal because you can just kind of focus on what you want to build and make it more portable and shareable without as much, ceremony and problems. So I think that DevOps containers really revolutionized development lifecycle, software development lifecycle. I think there's a lot of runway and there's a lot we can learn on the AI side of things from those movements. I think there's a
100.
lot that we can move, and obviously, I think these two worlds are colliding,
Yeah,
or very quickly. Because to your point, right? I mean, what's the point of building a model if it never gets used, right? Um, at
right.
some point, at some point, people who are cutting the checks are going to say, "Where's the value here?" Right? And I think that we're starting to see that now, where there's a lot of this negativity starting to come out, where people are saying, "Well, we threw this much money at AI. Where's the return on investment?" Now, I think that'll come, the return on investment, but I think practitioners, developers, AI, data scientists need to start thinking about the ROI sooner rather than later.
Yeah, you make an exceptional point, and this happens with any technological trend or
Yep.
software that happens. I mean, the same thing happened for cloud, right?
Yep.
You saw everyone moving their workloads right to hybrid cloud or the cloud, and then now, after it's such an established technology, we see a mix of both, right? People are moving back to on-premise and using a mix of both, right? Taking advantage of both, and I think that's what's going to happen with AI. And I think containers are going to be, a part of the tools that make all of this work at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So with that, I gotta go because I got a little one I gotta pick up at daycare, and have a great time in Las Vegas. And you're on the road again. I know you're going somewhere else next week, and safe
GitHub
travels.
Universe.
And I'm sorry, what?
GitHub Universe, yeah.
Nice, nice. That's in the Bay Area.
It's in San Francisco. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, if there's good news and stuff like that, good stuff coming out of there, then we can definitely do this again, and we'll plan it a little better next time, so I don't have to head out. And let us know in the comments below what you think, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and comment below what you think about this, man on the street or type of thing. Live from Las Vegas, Cedric Clyburn, um, and have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Frank. See you
Hey, no
soon.
problem. Thanks for joining.
Appreciate it.